Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Welcome, everyone, to the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 305. We're recording actually on Christmas Day, but you guys aren't going to see this till Sunday after, so I hope everyone had a Merry Christmas, right, Don?
Yeah, absolutely. Our family was in the weekend before Christmas, so Christmas Day, Robin and I are sitting around here with not a whole lot to do, so I've been trying to catch up on things here at my desk, getting ready for Josh Anderson to come in and get some video footage for 4 different hunts. My grandson Walker's hunt, son-in-law Corey's hunt, and the Doubting Thomas hunt that for the buck I shot back in November, and then the cull buck I shot. And I'll tell you what, I spent all morning so far going through video clips and putting them in different folders to make it easier for Josh to do that. And there's going to be some really good videos come out here. And speaking of good videos, we just had a good one released today. Ty Miller's was just absolutely fantastic. And that basically is exactly the type of video that we want to be putting out. And Ty did an excellent job on that. I hope everyone got a chance to see that. If they didn't, I'd encourage them to go look.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about just that in general. When we first started talking about, expanding Chasing Giants TV and the YouTube channel, and you wanting to do more focused on hunts, because you've put a hunt video out almost every year for the several years, even back to the Mel video. But I think we could have very easily just given our footage to someone else, somebody that has, an established show. We got a lot of friends who already have those channels and outlets either on TV or on YouTube. But you kind of wanted a different mission with this, and it's kind of the story of our lives and our careers a little bit. But talk to a little bit, we just finished up. We had the King David hunt on Thanksgiving, this buck that Ty shot with all of the stuff he was going through with his family, here released on Christmas Day, and now preparing to film. I'm coming up tomorrow morning, so we'll have a big crew of a bunch of different people talking on this video that you're going to do for Doubting Thomas and the family. Just kind of reflect on Chasing Giants TV and the YouTube channel and what we've tried to do with it a little bit different. I want to just pick your brain about that for a minute.
Well, if anyone's seen my Christmas Day post on social media, I made the statements there at the end that deer hunting is our passion, deer hunting is our platform, but deer hunting is not our purpose. That's one thing I didn't want to get lost with the videos that we put out. Our purpose is to reach lost deer hunters. We've got deer hunting in common with the thousands and tens and hundreds of thousands of people, really. And if we can use our platform to change lives and for generations in a family, really, that's what we want to be doing. So, we seen the opportunity with some of the video footage that we were getting, and some of the people we were partnered with that were also getting good footage. And, we're always looking for ways to partner with not only companies, but with good people to help spread the word. And, it's worked very well for us. Steve Shields produced some great videos for us, and then he went to work elsewhere, and still good friends and everything, but now Josh has kind of taken over, and we continue to try to put out videos that have a message that goes beyond deer hunting. Right. And that's why I like Ty's video so much that was released this morning is, it's a deer hunting video, but it's a video that a deer hunter could sit down with his wife and his kids, and there's a message there beyond how to manage your ground, hunting tactics, things like that. There's a message that goes way deeper than that. And those are the kind of videos that we want to be producing.
Yeah, so we've brought a lot of people along with this journey. We showcase a lot of different people. Chasing Giants TV is more than just about, and actually all of our sponsors of this podcast are not sponsors of the TV. It's kind of 2 different individual platforms. And if you're interested in learning more about telling stories like Ty Miller did today, or being part of a bigger plan, reach out to me via email or social media, Terry@realwildlifeproducts.com. We strategically made Chasing Giants TV and how that works with the guys that participate, and not only do habitat projects in the spring, but film their hunts in the fall, but are interested in a bigger purpose, like you just said. If you're interested in that, reach out to me. I don't mind talking to you. We have some pretty strict guidelines about who we work with and partner with, but we're always open to bring more people along that's going to promote the kingdom and good quality stuff that's about deer habitat and deer hunting. So if you're interested in that, I'm actually proud of what we've done with it. It's, I think, been an encouragement even for people who aren't deer hunters, and I guess that's the ultimate goal in the whole thing,
Yeah, and we should probably mention the reason that we don't have the same sponsors for the podcast and the TV is because a lot of that video footage, guys are using different brands of equipment, and we don't want to limit our message because if someone's got a good hunt and a good message, but they're using a different whatever brand of bow or tree stand or whatever, we don't want to have to turn that footage down. It's the message is more important to us than what a person has in their hand. And saying that, we are absolutely grateful for our sponsors. I think every one of our sponsors are like-minded. They have the same goals that we do. And I would start mentioning them, but I'd probably forget some, and I don't want to do that. But that's why what Terry said, our sponsors don't align 100%. It's because we don't want to have to turn down a good story because the person had the wrong equipment.
Yeah, so when you guys see sponsored stuff of Don and I, that is for Chasing Giants podcast, and then we have Chasing Assurance has their list of sponsors that help with Dad's show, and then TV, Osseo, and Real World are the partners for that. So yeah, it's a little bit different business model than anything else in the industry. We've had some people gravitate over towards us. I think there'll be more people that want to be part of a bigger thing than just deer hunting next year that have already talked to me about it. But if you're interested, reach out to me. Be happy to talk to you a little bit further about it. But thank you so much to Ty Miller. If you have not seen that, go to Chasing Giants with Don Higgins YouTube channel. It released on Christmas morning. You're not going to want to miss just the raw motion of him dealing with a lot of weight of different things going on in the world while he's able to get a couple days to hunt. So excited for him about that. You mentioned that Josh Anderson and I are coming in town. As you prepare, all the hunt footage has already been captured. That was captured in the field with the recoveries and the interviews. But as you're just sitting back thinking about 4 different hunts that you have and us doing the narration videos and maybe some B-roll footage, what's some key things that you want to make sure? We got great weather with warm weather in between Christmas and New Year's, but is there something that you really want to showcase with any of these hunts that people might be surprised at?
Yeah, there is. I think, the management buck I just shot, a week or so ago, there's some great footage of not only that buck on the day of the hunt, but other bucks that I think tell a pretty good story. I think I manage my property. There's not very many people in all of North America that are utilizing the same management principles that I am, at least on a free range herd. And I've seen it work. I know it works. It's not accepted by probably even the majority. I'd say it's the minority that buy into, when I start talking about cull bucks, management bucks, whatever you want to call them. But the proof is there. And, I think as they watch all 4 of these videos, really, because there's going to be some really good footage for all 4 of not only the bucks that get shot, but other bucks on the farm that we're seeing on those hunts. And if you're not subscribed to that channel, you really need to, because it is going to be different. And, the one thing that, that I really hope people take away, and I know a lot of people have said this, but I don't want even the Doubting Thomas hunt, my 4th 200 inch, I don't want that video to be about me and made out to be I'm some kind of a great hunter. In fact, I've asked about a half a dozen friends, including you, Terry, to have little narratives during that video, because I want the message to be more about this property and how this property is managed and how it's got to the point. You know, there's been some false narratives out there about this property that I want to educate people so that we got listeners that are trying to make their own properties better. And like I said, I'm managing mine a little bit different than just about anybody I know. One guy that does it very similar to me is Tim Heath, a good friend of mine from Lincoln, Illinois, and I'm hoping that he's going to be here too to add a little bit of a narrative to this story. But there's not, outside of Tim, I don't know, well, West Elks does to some degree, but he's got a pretty new property and he's just getting a foundation built now. But there's not a whole lot of people that are going to the extreme that I've done. And when I think back, you know, this didn't start, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. This is like a 30-year process to get to where I am today. And people got to realize that it's a journey. It's a long journey. And yeah, you're going to slowly see progress, but you can't just start day one and expect in 5 years to get where I'm at after 30 years. And then the other thing that's really important is that, all properties are going to have a different ceiling. And I'll be the first to tell you that a lot of the big bucks I shoot is because the property that I am blessed with that fell into my lap because it was my grandparents at one time just happens to lay out in such a way that I can add age to bucks easier than I could on a different property. And that is the key. I've started my consulting visits this year, and I'm going to these different properties, and I'm telling these guys day after day that, the key is we got to add age to these bucks. That is the challenge. It's easy to give them better nutrition. Genetics are what they are. We can influence that some by our culling methods, but it comes down to age. We've got to get those age on those bucks, and that's where the property layout is so critical. And again, I'll be the first to admit that if I didn't have this farm, I wouldn't have. I'd have some good bucks. I mean, I've killed a 214, a 193, a couple 180s off of this farm, 170s, and a bunch of 150 class bucks. But today, the bigger bucks that I'm shooting are coming off my farm, and it's for a reason. I can't find big ones elsewhere, or to the same class as the ones that I've got on my home farm. So I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to come off as a better hunter than anyone. But I've learned some things in the development of this farm that I'm trying to share that everybody can take away. And these 4 hunts, I'm telling you, guys, watch all 4 of them. And they're not all going to release at once. It's going to be scattered over the next year. But you're going to see a lot of different bucks besides the ones that get shot. And there's going to be a lot of lessons there that I hope people take to heart instead of just jumping to conclusions about why these big deer are here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, we're going to take a quick break and talk about Osseo Spot and then give everybody a reminder about where they're going to be able to see the Doubting Thomas buck release and some schedules. And then we'll talk a little bit about the weather here as we approach New Year's for you late season hunters that still have a tag. We'll be right back.
Osseo gear was forged by apex predators. Our 2 camo patterns are built from nature's most lethal hunters and designed to vanish anywhere in the whitetail's range. Our Raptor pattern draws inspiration from the unique feather patterns of a great horned owl, while our Rapix pattern is derived from the patterns of bobcats, coyotes, mountain lions, and wolves. But camo's just the start. Every detail of our gear is engineered for bow hunters, from our patent-pending bow hunting collar to our premium fabrics that keep you quiet, dry, and dialed in all seasons. Osseo gear is made to last, with our lifetime warranty standing behind every stitch. Visit Osseo Gear and use code CHASINGGIANTS for 15% off your first order. That's ASIOgear.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Thanks to Joe Miles and all of the guys at Osseo Gear for their support. Make sure you check out the latest Mission Whitetail podcast because Joe Miles had Bobby Worthington on. From what I understand, I have not listened to it yet, but pretty special episode. So as we look at the upcoming schedule, we just talked about at the time everybody's listening to this, we'll have spent 2.5 days doing photos and video for the next 4 hunts that Don will be releasing. That Doubting Thomas video, again, will premiere at the Midwest Sportsman's Classic in Shipshewana the 3rd weekend of February. Go to Midwest Sportsman's Classic's website. You and I both get a lot of emails about when certain stuff is going on, folks. We don't organize the show. We're partnered with the show. We appreciate the people, but we do have a resource, especially for our Amish and Mennonite folks, of speaker schedules, date and times, details about the art show, the baking contest. It's a family affair. So get your pencil or pen out, and I'm going to give you a phone number, and it has a phone tree on there. So when you contact Don and I and we don't have any answers for you, all of the latest information with schedules, speakers, everything about this show is going to be on the following phone number for the Midwest Sportsman's Classic. That number is 574-354-6030. I'll repeat it, 574-354-6030. So again, that's a phone number you can call. All of the details with speaking schedules, dates, times, locations, everything you need to know is going to be either on the Midwest Sportsman's Classic website or on that phone number that you guys can call into. So we appreciate those guys. And like I said, we're going to, in front of the Grand Hall, we're going to go right after our good friend Brent Henderson. And I think you, myself, and Al Foster are going to get up and actually talk a little bit and debut this hunt. And we're really excited about that, aren't we?
Yeah, I think that's Friday evening, isn't it?
That's Friday. Yep.
Friday evening, February 20th at the Shipshewana show. And then if you miss that one, we're going to do it at the Real World Dealer event, the Whitetail Management Conference, the next Wednesday on the 25th, I believe would be the next time it shows. So
we'll repeat
two
that.
Opportunities.
Repeat that program for those folks that'll be at both of those two events. Speaking of events, the ATA show is getting a lot of buzz. You and I have pretty much separated completely away from the ATA show over the years. We've talked about that on the podcast, but I commend them. They're trying to adapt. It's an open to the public show for 2 days this year, and I am going to go up and probably be around at least Friday, maybe Saturday. Stop by one of our partners' booths. I'll be bouncing around between Coonless Deer Feeders, Osseo, Wise Eye, and our other partners. So make sure you stop in and see if I'm there. Say hello. We'd love to meet you and talk hunting for a little bit, maybe even look at some trail camera pictures if you want. So the ATA show is coming up this coming week. From there, we go straight to the 360 Blind Dealer event, and you and I are going to do a live podcast and tour their brand new expanded facility as part of the big dealer event that they have up there in January. And then my January gets even busier. I leave for South Texas. I'm finishing up the year in South Texas on my first southern bow hunt, finding a good place for all of us to go the following year for a big Lester's Feet fundraiser. So you're going to be hitting the consulting trail pretty hard, right?
Yeah, I've got several visits across the country, and I will not be making the ATA show. In fact, you'll probably never see me in another one, but hope all the people that go have a great time. And I used to live for that show. That used to be one of the highlights of my year, but the older I get, if I could just go to the woods by myself and be left alone, that's worth something to me.
When I grow up, I want to be a hermit. Don Higgins t-shirt. Maybe we need to make that one.
Well, people probably have a hard time believing it. People that really know me don't have a hard time believing it, but I'm pretty much a loner, really, and I've got to really pry myself out of my shell when it comes to these shows. And I literally would rather just walk out in the woods by myself and look for deer signs, shed antlers, hang tree stands, or whatever. But that's just me. But, I love the people, though. I get out and get to a show and get to talk to all these people, and I love it. It's just prying myself out to get there is the challenge.
Well, let's look at those folks that do not have the travel schedule that you and I have. We are in the middle of right now of a huge warm front that has come through. I don't remember a Christmas day in Kentucky where we were in the 70s, which I think is what it is today. I think you're in the high 60s in Illinois and going to be like this for the next few days, which is actually good for us while we're recording some footage. But let's look at the forecast for some folks that maybe still have a buck tag, because we got a drastic drop in temperature right after this podcast release that some people might be able to take advantage of if they have the food.
Yeah, the weather, if we just look back, probably the last 5-6 months, it's just been crazy because we had a really wet spring. I mean, southern Illinois especially had way more rain than the rest of us. A lot of the storms that came through went south of us, and the crops got planted much later to the south of me than they did to the north of me. So we had a lot of rain early, and then it shut off. And when it shut off, I mean, it shut off. And we went weeks without rain, go into the fall with basically a drought. Farmers got into the fields and did not have to stop because there was no rain breaks. They just kept going, got their harvest done, went right into their fall tillage work and whatever. Warm temperatures stayed around throughout October. The first few days of November were, we seen the green leaves on the trees way later than we typically do. The woods just stayed green because of the warm weather. And then I was just gathering up footage for these hunts, and my son-in-law Corey shot his buck in the snow on November 10th. So when it snowed, there were still a lot of leaves on the trees, actually. Well, then we wind down the rut, and December starts out brutal cold. There was actually snow in the last few days of November, carried right on into December. Then we got a couple of brutal cold spells, below zero even. Now here we are towards Christmas. It warmed up to record high temperatures in a lot of places. I just heard from a real world dealer in southern Missouri that the temperatures there are in the 70s with blue skies and sunshine today, Christmas Day. So, it's just been crazy. But here, our forecast calls for Sunday, the day this releases, we're supposed to be in the low 60s. But the very next day, on Monday, the high is supposed to be 22. So you're talking like a 40-degree difference in 24 hours. But it's even more drastic than that, because Sunday night going into Monday, it's supposed to get down to 14. So, it's going to go from the 60s to 14. And then the next day only get up to 22. And it's supposed to stay cold for 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. And then it's going to warm up a little bit, but not much. It's going to be in the 30s for the following several days. So, man, the weather is just all over the place. I don't know that I've ever seen a year where there was that many extremes in the weather.
Now, have you noticed on your trail cameras, I know you haven't been in the stand or the blind any, but have you noticed on your trail cameras when this warm front hit that they're back on the clover in your orchards, feeding on those greens, and then most likely when that big temperature drops, they're going to be back on the beans and the corn?
Yeah, I have noticed that, actually. And what's really been noticeable is the number of pictures. So when we went through those really cold spells, I was getting like 1,200 pictures a day on my cell cams. Yesterday, the temperature was really warm, and I got less than 200. This morning, I got up and I deleted less than 100 that I'd gotten overnight, where I'd been deleting about 300 or 400 overnight. The warm temperature has just suppressed deer movement this time of the year at an unbelievable rate. And the cold temperatures just increased the deer movement at an unbelievable rate. And, I go back to my days with the captive deer, and I seen the same thing on the food intake. On these really cold days, the deer that I had in a particular pen would eat like 4 or 5 times what they would on a warm day. There would be some really warm days where they hardly ate anything in the winter. And you see the same thing, in the wild. And that's one of the things that's given me a unique perspective when it comes to deer management, is some of these lessons that I learned from the captive deer. And I don't think people understand just how drastic the change is in their feed intake from one day to the next based on temperature only. And these cold days that are coming up, the day after this releases, Monday and Tuesday, are going to be fantastic days for afternoon hunts over food sources.
So their metabolism is basically slowed down so much that when it's warm, they don't need to eat and then come back and they need that food to keep them warm and produce the energy. Do you see the same thing with your cattle?
Not so much with the cattle. Those domestic animals, they're going to eat when you put food in front of them. It's totally different. When I first got the captive deer, I'd raised cattle all my life. When I first got captive deer, I thought, man, I know about feeding animals. I'm going to grow some giant bucks just because of the knowledge I gained from the cows. Well, I learned pretty quick that a cow and a deer are just two totally different things. And both are ruminants, but just totally different. And cattle are more grazers and deer are more browsers. And it's just unbelievable. If you see it firsthand on a day-to-day basis, you can really learn a lot about these animals.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break and go to our Higgins hot seat question brought to us by 360 Blinds. And you're going to absolutely despise this week's question because I know you don't like it, but I'll do it with you. But we're approaching the new year, and neither one, you or I, are much on New Year's resolutions or anything, but I think both of us are goal-oriented and where we want to pursue changes either in our lives or with our businesses. So my question to you, Don, is a goal or objective you would like to achieve, number one, on your home farm, number two, with any of your businesses or all of your businesses, and number three, with your family. What is some goals or objectives you would like to accomplish or work towards in this coming year as we approach the new year?
Well, for my property, I've got some minor projects. I've got most of the major ones done. I'd just like to add a few more acres, believe it or not. I don't think that ever changes. Add a few more acres, that'd be a good goal. For my family, that's easy. Spend more time with them. I've got my grandsons now living right down the road. My daughter, Andrea, and her husband, Corey, and Wyatt and Walker have moved into their new home this week. So I could literally walk to their house from mine. Definitely going to be a four-wheeler or side-by-side drive up there many times in the coming years. But just being able to spend more time with the grandsons that are here close, but the entire family, really. So that would be my goal there. On the business side of things, I tried, and I was just thinking about this earlier today. It's kind of ironic that you bring it up. And I think that if there's anything I've learned about business, there's a couple things really. But number one, you got to surround yourself with good people, which I've done. Let them run with their talents instead of trying to micromanage them, which I think I've done. Maybe sometimes too much, but I just tell Terry an idea and expect him to run. But the real takeaway for me is if I look at other businesses, successful businesses, and how they operate, and what I might take away from them, and two businesses that jump out at me, and again, I was just thinking about this earlier today, but two businesses that jump out at me are Matthews Archery, puts their belief in Jesus Christ first, and look how blessed they are. I mean, they are at the top of the whole archery industry as far as success as a company. And then the other business I look at and see success is Chick-fil-A. They are closed on Sundays. You go into that place and you feel it's just totally different than any other fast food place. The people working there have more manners. The place is cleaner. Just total respect for every customer that comes through the door. That they're operating on biblical principles, and just like Matthews does. And when they do that, they become a blessed business. Chick-fil-A does more business during 6 days a week than any other fast food does in 7. And there's a reason for it. They're blessed. And so I just try to keep priorities in order and try to use our businesses in a way that glorifies God at every opportunity, not get greedy or money hungry. I had an older gentleman one time tell me that there's a fine line between ambition and greed, and he advised me not to cross it. And he did so in a very kind way, and I've never lost sight of that either. So I try to always be ambitious, always try to be someone that shares their blessings, don't hoard all those blessings, and don't stand on the rooftop and shout it every time you do a good deed. Just quietly do those good deeds without anybody even knowing. And if you do that, you're going to be blessed, no doubt about it. And my real goal, business-wise, is that there are young guys either listening to this podcast or watching us and how we operate, and they take something away and they operate their business or start a business and operate it in the same way that we do, where we give back, we don't forget our humble beginnings, and we don't cross that fine line between ambition and greed.
Yeah, that's probably some of the best advice we could ever remind ourselves of daily. I have a new personal goal for myself, and that is to change something in my vocabulary because it bothers me when other people use it. So I have to really buckle down, and I'm going to eliminate the phrase "you should" or anything along that context out of my vocabulary, because unless I am personally asked for my opinion on something, I'm not going to offer it like everybody else seems to like to do on social media. It infuriates me when we have to be on social media. I guess we don't have to, but it's a very vital part of everything we do. And the people that just feel the need to, with no information, no context, tell someone else what they should be doing differently bothers me, and I want to personally eliminate that phrase completely out of my vocabulary. Even when somebody asks me my opinion on something, I'm not going to use that terminology. So this is for the tens of thousands of people that listen to this podcast. You guys can all hold me accountable for that as I eliminate it from my vocabulary this year.
Well, I know you can do it, and the reason I know is because if anyone listening to this would have known me 25 years ago, I had one of the filthiest mouths on the planet. I mean, it is so bad that you can ask Al Foster. I didn't just use normal cuss words. I made up my own new words. That's how bad it was. And I guess the Holy Spirit got a hold of me. And today when I hear somebody throwing out the F-bomb or something like that, I just cringe. It's like, you realize how bad you sound. And remember how bad I must have sounded all those years ago.
Yeah. From a business standpoint, I'm in a quite a different. I'm not saying this to brag or do anything. It's just to try to encourage other people. I have a very, very good financial advisor that is much, much smarter at these things than I could ever be. And Dan Pfeiffer's a good friend of mine. He's on the board of Lester's Feet. He does our retirement package for our company, and just super, super talented young man that in all things he does when he works with people, it's how to do things financially with biblical principles. And, Casey and I, through working very, very hard through corporate America for a big portion of our lives, our retirement's fine. I mean, we could at this point in our lives coast, but I feel I've never felt more motivated than I do right now to what we do in every aspect to impact other people. And what I mentioned on the podcast the other day, between you and I and the companies that we have over 40 employees. And that's a huge responsibility, but it's also an opportunity for us to do something that we've been blessed with, to provide for other people's families, to put other people's kids through college, to pay off their house, I've never been more motivated, because think about it, when I was younger, all I wanted to do was me, get a promotion, what's next, and now I'm in the position I really could coast, and I'm working harder now than I've ever worked. And I really, really want that to be for not only the legacy of my kids. I told them all this last couple weeks while we were all in Florida. I said, we're done, but I'm working for you now. So you all need to communicate to me a little bit about what you all want out of life, so I can spend the next few years of my professional career trying to help you achieve that. And man, that's probably one of the most, I guess, proud things that I think I could ever do in my career at this point is build that legacy for not only my kids, but the people that we're lucky enough to work with every day, with our employees, our coworkers, and provide that opportunity. So that's my goal for business wise, is just to continue to hammer down while I still have good health and put others first, and see how God blesses it.
Well, I can totally understand it. When you said you're not working for yourself anymore, I'm in the same boat. I could easily be retired, but I want my grandkids, I don't want to hand them a big inheritance. So what I do want to provide for them is opportunities.
Yep.
So if they have ambition, I want them to have the opportunity to chase whatever their dream is. And even more than I did, I'm extremely blessed. I'm living the dream. I wouldn't change my job for anything, but I want my grandkids to have opportunities, not a handout. So I totally get what you're saying, Terry.
Yep. All right, well, we're going to take a break and listen to a spot from our partners at Midwest Land Group and be back with some listener-submitted questions this week. We'll be right back.
Does your real estate agent know the difference between a rub and a scrape? Or did they ask how many deer you caught this year? At Midwest Land Group, our agents evaluate the land the way serious hunters do, because it's exactly who we are. From surveys, soil types, floodplains and easements, to timber quality, tree stands, access, and food plots. Whether you're interested in buying or selling, work with an agent who speaks your language. Visit MidwestLandGroup.com to connect with one today. Midwest Land Group. Buyers, sellers, land. Connected.
All right, our first question comes from William Miller from Clyde, New York. And he says, Dear Don and Terry, when do bucks go back to their summer range, before or after shedding their antlers? Do your neighbors use real-world wildlife products? If so, what do you have on your property that has more pulling power than your neighbors? And how far do deer travel during the late season for a good food source? Thanks for the great podcast, and congrats on your last 200-inch buck, Don. William, there's a bunch of questions there. So the bucks when do they go back to their summer range from their winter range? What I've seen here in my part of the Midwest is usually in March. You ask if it's before they shed antlers or after. It just depends on the buck and the years. I've got bucks that'll winter and spend the whole fall and winter on me, and yet I never find their antlers, so I'm pretty confident they leave earlier. A couple years back, there's a location where I know that bucks go to spend the summer in a bachelor group. And I was out there doing some tree stand work in early March. And when I was out there, I bumped a bachelor group of bucks in March that had already shed. Every one of them had already shed, but I could tell they were all bucks. There wasn't a bunch of them. There was 4 or 5 of them, but those bucks had already gone to their summer range in March. There's a buck on my place that I've wanted to find his sheds for a couple years and have not got a single shed from him. He just leaves before he sheds his antlers. There's another buck that lived on my place. He got killed when he was 9.5 years old. I think I found 1 shed antler off of that buck in all the years he was here. So he shed a lot of antlers somewhere, but they weren't where I could find them, and I'm just pretty confident they were not on my place. It just varies from buck to buck. Another question you had was about my neighbors plant real-world wildlife products. There's just not much deer management going on around me. There's a little bit, nothing real close that I know of anyway. And I don't go snooping around on other people's properties, so I'm not 100% sure what's going on other properties. But I know there's a little bit in the neighborhood, and I know of at least one neighbor that's probably 3 miles from me that plants some real world stuff, but nobody's doing it on the scale that I am. And I think the big thing that sets my property apart from anyone, and not just neighbors that border me, but in the whole neighborhood, is the diversity of food that I offer, the volume of food I offer, and the total freedom of human intrusion I give the cover on my place. So when I'm hunting, I'm always on the edge with my scent blowing out across an ag field, and the deer have the cover. They just don't encounter danger, at least human danger within that. So that's how I'm setting my property apart. I guess you're asking because you probably have neighbors planting the same thing you are and trying the same thing. And you just got to diversify, and bigger food plots have big pulling power. A small food plot just does not have the pulling power of the big one. So if you want to compete with your neighbors, have bigger plots and have more food diversity. Is there a third question in there, Terry?
I think you got it. It's because the two were kind of combined, was the real world products and how do you set yourself apart. So I think you got both of them with that one. Okay, the next one is from Sean Dixon from Alamo, Georgia.
says, Merry Christmas, Don and Terry. I live in Georgia, where archery season comes in early September, followed by rifle in mid-October, and both last until early January. I choose to bow hunt all season because I find it much more challenging and rewarding. So my question is, would y'all rifle hunt more if allowed in y'all's states? Or do you prefer to bow hunt like I do? Thank you. Well, Sean, I can rifle hunt with straight wall cartridges, but I bow hunt right through the gun season. I don't hunt as hard through the gun season as I do outside, simply because I don't want to take a chance of bumping deer off of my property during gun season. But just the videos that I was talking about that are going to be released, there is some fantastic footage I've got during this year's gun season. I was hunting with a bow, but that's going to be shared on one of those videos. Some of the best video footage I've probably ever gotten. So, yeah, I do. I just don't have a desire to hunt with a gun. Last year I did when I was trying to get my doe herd under control. I don't remember, I shot 2 or 3 of them with a gun just because it's so much more efficient. In the future, if I'm in serious doe patrol mode, I will definitely use a gun. I think I'm going to try to get way more specific with my doe patrol than what I have been. So, like last year, the does I shot, it was more based on location and opportunity than anything, and I'm going to start targeting specific animals and to really get specific, those does that have buck fawns. I don't think that I'm going to have to shoot a lot of does here, but I am going to continue to have to shoot some, and I'm going to, if it takes me all season long, I'm going to target those does that have buck fawns. I just think that the payoff is worth the extra effort.
I love bow hunting. I think I've done it all. I'm a pew pew enthusiast, so we don't get flagged by YouTube, but I love playing with firearms. It's a really, really fun family thing that we've done for many generations. My grandfather Lester was a very big enthusiast, but I guess when you can get a mature buck within 20 yards of you, whether you get the shot or not, that's almost as much as anything else. But I really, really love bow hunting. With Kentucky having full rifle and allowed to use suppression, I need to buckle down and do more doe harvesting and doing that with a rifle. Kentucky's rifle season is right during the peak of the rut, which the last few years I've had a target buck in Illinois, and I haven't been home for Kentucky's rifle season. So I don't know when the last time I rifle hunted was in Kentucky. And boy, it would sure work out if I could tag a buck in October in Illinois and be back for rifle season, so I could shoot some of these does. But I love both of them. But if you give me a choice, I'm always going to put a bow in my hand. I am going to take a Brenton 6mm arc to Texas with me. We're going down there to vet out this place for our Lester's Feet fundraiser, and I'm going to bow hunt, but I believe they let us shoot hogs too. So with it being a suppression friendly state, and I'm as long as I got to check game laws and make sure it's okay with the ranch, but I'm going to hopefully have 2 pieces of equipment with me. One of them a 6mm arc from Brenton, and then my Matthews. So yeah, and it's nothing wrong with people that want to shoot with a rifle. I know Georgia. I have some buddies in Georgia, and man, they have a very, very long rifle season, but they also have a lot different deer herd than we have up in the Midwest. There's a big difference in that too.
Yep, and difference in terrain. There's some thick cover down south. Not that we don't have thick cover, but man, they got a lot of it down there.
Yep. All right. Next question's coming up.
This one comes from John Muraski from Campbellsport, Wisconsin. It says, Hi, Don. I have 2 questions. First question, I have a couple of small food plots that each have black walnut trees at the end of each plot. Both plots are spring-planted clover chicory. Nothing is growing under the walnut trees. I'm not sure if this was due to shade when planting or the fact that it's hard to grow anything under black walnuts. Any thoughts? Second question, since you're not raffling off your bow for Lester's Feet this year, did you consider raffling off your 1970 sight instead? Thanks for continually putting out great educational content. Well, John, that sight is probably worth more than the bow. I would not give up that sight for anything. So, no, we are not raffling off that sight. In fact, I might have to add it as an extra rider on my insurance to make sure it's covered fully, because those things are just hard to come by. Anybody that's wondering what he's talking about, I use an old site called an eradicator. So if you go online and you look for eradicator bow sight, you'll see what he's talking about. It's an old, very simple concept, and it's not going to be for driving tacks. But I'll tell you what, if I get a deer at 20 yards, he's dead. Period. And I don't have to worry about a peep or any of that nonsense. Keep it simple, stupid is my philosophy. So those eradicator sights, I don't think they've made them in a lot of years. But, man, I love them. I think I've got 2 or 3 of them. So I do have extras. And if anybody out there knows anything about eradicator sights, has one laying around you want to get rid of, they used to have tritium pins that glowed in the dark. And I would sure love to have some new tritium pins. The tritium no longer glows in mine, but they still function just fine. Your question about the walnut trees. So walnuts actually give off a chemical called juglin. And that juglin acts as a herbicide that'll prevent a lot of different plants from growing. And it's just Mother Nature's way of allowing that walnut tree to become established without competition. So a lot of other trees will not grow around walnut trees. Now some will, but a lot of them won't. A lot of other plants will not as well. And you're seeing that with your clover. When those walnuts fall off the tree and that outer shell turns soft and black, and that stuff gets in the soil, well, that's where a lot of that comes from. The roots give off some too, but a lot of it comes from them fallen walnuts and the breakdown of that outer shell on that walnut itself. But the trees could be shading some as well, but a walnut typically does not have a very dense shade. I suspect it's the juglin more than anything that's keeping your clover from growing.
All right.
Next one comes from Bobby Miller from Evans, Georgia. It says, Dear Don and Terry, question for both of you regarding the subject of deer jumping the string. I have pondered this for some time now. What do you think is the major factor that causes a deer to jump the string or duck an arrow? Is it the sound of the bow being shot or the sound of the arrow approaching? I am sure it is most likely some combination of the two. The sound of the bow being shot gets their attention, and the approaching arrow confirms their concern. I know conditions and the deer are always going to be different, and there is no easy answer to this dilemma, but I thought it might be interesting to see on camera how this might play out. Well, Bobby, the answer is real easy, and I'm going to jump on a soapbox here, and I'm going to let you have it. No, just kidding. My opinion is deer wouldn't jump the string if you shot them at 20 yards. I don't have that issue whatsoever. I think the whole thing with archery gear in my lifetime, I've just seen it evolve and become more and more efficient. And when it does, people start pushing the limits on yardage. When I started, 30 yards was a long shot. You know what? Today, 30 yards is still a long shot for me. For most archers, 30 yards is a very simple, easy shot. But when you start poking deer or poking arrows towards deer out, 40, 50, 60 yards, whatever, an arrow is not near as fast as a bullet. It doesn't take that 40 yards versus 20 yards. That deer's got twice as long to react to that shot. So I think the whole culprit is people taking too long of shots. And, as far as getting on my soapbox again here a little bit, as far as the advancement in equipment, I just seen a YouTube video today for an arrow gun. And I know what's coming. Those things are going to be legal. Give it 10 years, and we're going to be shooting arrows out the barrel of a gun. They're doing it right now. They've got the arrow guns doing it. The politicians are going to get bought off just like they did with the crossbow. The hunting industry, the hunting community wants it easier. It's a sad fact, but it wants it easier. My good buddy Todd Hewing went on a little private rant this week on a email text.
It wasn't a rant. It was a dissertation.
Well, there was multiples. He did it on social media, but there was also a private text that went out to about 8 or 10 of us. Was you on that one? I think you was. But yeah, you was. Yeah, and he's right on the money. Here's the crazy thing, guys. And I've not heard anybody talk about this. So we touched on it a little bit a couple weeks back, but we're putting so much pressure on mature bucks, and everybody wants a mature buck. And so we keep making it easier. We keep advancing our equipment and advancing game regulations to make it easier and easier. And every one of those steps decreases the number of mature bucks we have to chase. So at some point, there's no turning back. We've got more people chasing them. We got easier equipment to use, shooting farther, more accurately, longer seasons, and there's fewer and fewer mature bucks because of it. Ask any serious deer hunter in the Midwest, and there is not the mature bucks on camera that there was 10 years ago. There just is not, period. And 10 years ago, we just had the massive EHD outbreak in 2012, so we had just recovered from that, and yet we still had more mature bucks than what we have today. Guys, I'm running cameras in multiple states across the Midwest, pushing 36 properties. I've got a pretty good handle on what the deer herd looks like. And the age structure has absolutely been trashed. As we've made it easier and easier, we've eliminated the mature buck. Fewer of them than there's ever been. And guys are going to say, yeah, well, you keep shooting giants. You just shot a 200 this year, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, because of my property is the only reason I'm doing it. If I was out there, knocking on doors for permission, and I still do some of that, but you know what? I can't find a buck no matter how hard I look, I can't find a buck on permission property or on public land that I want to chase today. And some of that is me raising the bar, but most of that is because those bucks do not exist to the degree that they just did. Not even a decade ago, 5 years ago. We went so far down the toilet. Places where I always used to find a really good buck I can think of 2 places just right off the top of my head right now where every summer there would be at least one buck over 170 inches in these 2 bachelor groups. Today, there hasn't been a single buck over 150 in either of those bachelor groups for at least 3 or 4 years. We have just totally decimated the herd, and it just keeps going that direction. And the crazy thing is the hunting community gets behind every little advancement. The crossbow. Go post something anti-crossbow and see how you get ripped apart on the internet. Everybody wants it easy, but yet they don't understand that the easier they make it, the less of those desired target animals are out there. It's a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. So
Cost of everything.
Yep. Jumping the string is nothing but just a result of people taking too long a shots.
And so this is gonna come across the wrong way at the beginning, but I'll circle back. How far was the shot when you shot Smokey? Because that was the furthest shot I think I've ever seen you make, and that deer did drop.
Mm-hmm.
How far away was Smokey when you shot him?
I think he was 28? About 22, 23 yards.
Yeah. Everything else since then has been within 10. And if you got the curiosity to go back and look at footage, pull up all of the hunts, including and look at how the deers reacted when they're at 7 to 12 yards, there's no ducking. It's there.
And if people would work on they want shortcuts. They don't want to put the time in. If you would work on your hunting skills, you can get less than 20 yards from the deer you want to shoot. But instead of working on hunting skills, people want to take a shortcut. They want to be able to shoot farther. Instead of working to get that deer into 20 yards, they want to be able to shoot him at 40. So they buy a crossbow or whatever. And in turn, we just have fewer and fewer of those animals that a lot of us desire to chase. And the thing of it is, I go on these little mini rants or whatever you want to call them, but it doesn't really affect me that much. I promise you, I'm going to kill a good buck next year. I don't know how big, but I'm going to kill a good buck next year. So I'm trying to help the rest of the community, and so is Todd Ewing. My buddy, he's about the same age as me, and he lived through the good old days and all that. He owns way more land than I do, probably thousands of acres of hunting land. He doesn't need to lobby for regulation changes or anything like that. He's just like me, trying to look out for the young guy that's coming up that has the same passion that we had when we were younger, and they're not going to have the opportunities. This deer herd's going down the toilet.
All right. We're going to get, hopefully, 2 more, but maybe we'll see how long this one takes.
This one comes from Sid Lemoyne from Plouchville, Louisiana. It says, hello, Don and Terry. Thanks for sharing your faith and political stance openly. America needs more role models like you guys. Well, thank you, but there's probably people that would argue with you. My question is about access. I have a 100-acre tract in the big woods of Mississippi and can only access a really good food plot stand by traveling through the center of the property. I was planning to put in a road along the perimeter of the property to access that plot. The problem is that in doing so, I will likely ruin one of my better bow stands that I can hunt with minimal intrusion. I don't really like the road through the sanctuary, but hate to ruin a really good stand. Your advice would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, Sid. Well, Sid, I've said it 100 times on here. If you don't have good access, you do not have a good stand site. You go through the middle of your property, you bump the deer. You don't have to do that too many times. They're finding a different place to stay and to bed. I tell my clients all the time, if you want to kill big deer consistently, you got to hunt them on the properties where they bed. So it's way more important to keep that deer bedded on your property than it is to hunt that, what you think is an ideal stand site. Because if it does not have good access, it is not a good stand site.
If he's asking the question, I question whether it's a good stand site. We use a term when we're on our consulting visits of sentimental stands. And we get a lot of people that are really attached to a stand because they maybe shot a big buck out of it in 1996 or 98 or something. And you really have to step back and really look at that. And it's hard for some people because they know that they might have had a really good, opportunity or had a win at one of those locations. But when we look at the property and getting the most out of it, sometimes it's hard reality check for landowners to say, yep, I need to baby back out of that, which I considered one of my favorite stands.
Yep.
Sentimental stands. All right, you want to do one more real quick?
Sure.
All right. Nobody ever cares if we go long.
Nope. If they do, we'll give them a full refund. This one comes from Jared Raber from Wooster, Ohio. It says, hello, Don and Terry. Thank you for all the knowledge you guys share on this awesome podcast. I look forward to every episode. Have you or Terry ever had an experience where you got busted by a mature buck and then later that same season shot him from the same tree or really close to it? I've heard you say before that if you spook a mature buck, there's a good chance you won't kill him from that stand. Has this ever happened to you? Thanks. Jared, it has never happened to me, and I'll take it even a step further. I have never spooked a mature buck from a stand and killed him there in a following season. Once they get onto you, they just don't come through unless the conditions are to their advantage. I'm not saying they'll never come through there again, but when they do, they got the wind at their advantage, or they're able to see, maybe the stand or whatever. But no, it has never happened to me.
Well, it's tough. They're a different animal when they get mature. What works for a 3-year-old doesn't work for a mature buck.
Yep.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody. We hope you had a Merry Christmas. And, think about maybe some goals that you want to do for this coming year. If you want to share those, drop them down below. Make sure you check out Dad's podcast. Next week, we're going to have a special guest on with us and talk about a new partnership that Don and I are pursuing with Chasing Giants that hope helps accomplish what we were talking about, and that's a bigger purpose. So for those of you who want to learn more about that, tune in next week. Make sure you go back and watch Ty Miller's hunt that was released on Christmas Day. You'll really enjoy that. And I believe Brent Henderson has Sunday Night Prayer Time this week. So make sure you stay on after the closing credits for that.
Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Hope you guys had a great Christmas and Happy New Year coming up. God bless. We'll see you back here next week.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sunday Night Prayer Time. It is always an honor to be with you guys. We've got the new year coming up here in just a couple of days, so I thought I'd kind of try to put something together that really helps us learn how to be able to let go and let God. We've all heard that said before. It's not easy to do. But that's where we're going to go today. I wanted to kind of bring up quickly, we've got the Shipshawana event coming up for some of you who are wondering about that. That's the Midwest Sportsman's Classic. I'll be speaking there for 2 of the days. I think it's the 19th and 20th. I've got a session on both days. I think it's called Into the Wilds is my session. Some crazy stories. You've heard some of them before. Bear attacks, catching black mambas, being, shipwrecked off the coast of Alaska. Some really great survival stories are going to happen that day. But I'm looking forward to being with you guys. But I want to take some of those things today, and I want to bring it together because, as you know from my last time I was on here, I went through open heart surgery. I had quadruple bypass back in September. And wow, you want to talk about something that's really scary. And it really brings everything back to, do I trust God? Because when you get that news, you might not be here, a week from now. And you're so involved in the ministry, the purpose that God has for you. You've got a family, you've got responsibilities. It can cause you to do one of two things, either run in fear. What is that one thing they say, forget everything and run? Or I say face everything and roar. So how do we come back stronger than what we were before? It's been 3.5 months since my surgery. I'm back to working out 5 days a week. I've got a brand new book that I should have pre-release copies for at the event. It's called The Big 5 Man Killers. It's an 8-week study for guys to really help them break through all the unhealthy thoughts, emotions, and actions that the enemy is hitting us with. But I kind of wanted to give you an example of how do we know whether it's God's voice? How do we know whether it's the enemy's voice that's kind of going after us? And what do we do with that? How do we literally declaw the lies of the enemy? And it starts with knowing your Father's voice. Because once you know His voice, you can tell the difference between light and dark. Darkness cannot coexist where the light is. So it's about finding those lies in those thoughts that are going through our head and then untangling them using the Word of God. So the last 3.5 months, the recovery time hasn't been all like laying in a recliner, right, and having to watch eating a Mediterranean diet or whatever they have me doing. It's been a lot of time sitting before God in the quiet. Turning off technology, getting rid of those things in my life that can pull me from the presence of God. It's really difficult to listen to what God is trying to say to us if we're staying so busy all the time, whether we're working, whether we're running around doing errands all the time. We're preoccupied maybe sometimes with ministry. My wife has even said to me, I'm ready for you to be done with this new book because I need you to be present with me. It's easy to get things out of line. And as we go walking into this new year, I want us to learn how to be able to let go of some of those things that are keeping us too busy, that keep us from being in the presence of God, being able to love our families well. Because being present with God means we're more capable of being present with our families. Back, it was around, I think, 2010, 2011. I was in, just off the coast in Alaska, in Deep Creek, as a place where we were fishing out of. And we had a 15.5-foot Zodiac made out of Hypalon raft with a 25-horse Yamaha. And we would go out into Cook Inlet. Now, Cook Inlet is about 100 miles long. It's about 30 miles wide. And every 12 hours, you get about a 30-foot difference in the tidal bore. And when it's going through the change of the tides, 30 feet difference, it's massive. It'll eat your lunch on the count of one if you're not paying attention. And so we were out fishing for halibut one morning, and you can see like Mount Redoubt, Mount Iliam, there's some massive volcanoes on the opposite side of Cook Inlet. And there's some big storms that can come through there. So you really do have to be paying attention. Well, this one morning we got out there, and it was really foggy. We were about 6 miles off the coast. And we're fishing, and I had on, I think it was slack tide. It hadn't really started picking up yet. So I think I only had on like maybe a 1-pound sinker. You think about an 8-ounce split shot. We're starting off with 1-pound sinkers. And as the tide began to pick up a little bit more, I would change over to a 2-pound sinker because you're trying to keep it down at the bottom because that's where the halibut are. Well, the fog was so thick, we really got to where we couldn't see more than 50 yards in any direction. And I had hooked onto something huge, and I thought it was going to be like 150, 200-pound halibut. Those are rare. Usually you're getting chickens, you're getting little like 10-pounders. And this one, I thought, this is going to be like a world record for me. I'd caught a 100-pounder before, but I'm thinking this is going to be at least double that. I didn't want to let go. So I've got this thing. My pole is bent over the side of the Zodiac. I'm bracing my knees on the edge of this raft. You know, as the tide is starting to pick up, when you're starting to get 1 and 2 foot rollers, it's kind of hard to balance. And when you get a good halibut up, what we do is we had a 9mm. We'll just kind of take it and pop it in the head, pull it in the boat. Because if you get those things in the boat with you, they are so powerful. They'll snap your leg, they'll snap your poles. So you need to shoot the big ones before you get them in. So my buddy's got his 9mm. He's waiting. It's been about a 30-minute fight. I'm trying to get this thing. And I'm thinking he's right behind me, looking over my shoulder, getting ready to pop this thing as soon as I get it to the top. But that's not what he was focused on. What I couldn't see was what he was noticing was maybe about 60 yards away. He began to notice something coming towards us. 60 yards is not very far. But the reason he could see it is because it was massive. It was a huge cargo ship. We didn't even hear this thing coming. I was so focused on getting this fish up. By the time I'm getting this thing to the surface, I noticed it wasn't a halibut, it was a skate. If you've ever seen a skate, they're like a stingray, and it was about the size of a car hood. It was that big. So I'm realizing, well, I don't really want this thing, but he's telling me to cut the line. Well, at first I didn't realize this was a skate. I'm not paying any attention to him. All I'm thinking is, this is going to be a massive halibut, and I'm going to have bragging rights, right? So I'm trying to get this thing up. And finally, I recognize his voice say, "Brent, cut the line now." I could hear the urgency in his voice. We've shared campfires all over the world, everything from Africa to Alaska and everything in between, many deer camps all over the world. And I could tell in his voice, "Brent, cut the line now." And as I looked up, I see this massive ship coming towards us. Immediately cut the line. He hits the tiller, gets us out of there. We literally just missed going underneath the front of this boat by probably 10 yards. They never saw us in the fog. And that's kind of what it's like when we're listening to the voice of God. Sometimes things are bearing down on us, and the only thing that we can focus on is the problem. And sometimes we don't even see it because we're so engaged in what we want that we're not willing to let go of control and let God speak to us in whatever He's trying to say to us. During my heart surgery, in the recovery, understand I'm 65. I'm a speaker. I'm an author. That's what I do. And when this kind of a challenge hit, the fear that can go through you quickly, that the enemy's trying to hit you with is, "Brent, you're going to have to cancel all your fall speaking events." Well, you're self-employed, so that means that income is now gone. Your wife has to take off 3 weeks of work, unpaid, to be able to help take care of you. No PTO. That money's gone. You think about all the hard work you're doing to try to stay in shape. I'm telling you, in the first 2 days, I put on 20 pounds in the hospital because of water retention. And within 2 weeks, I was 20 pounds lighter because I had not only lost all that water, but muscle mass was beginning to go away. It's just being drained from your body in a way that you can't even imagine how quickly that happens. But I watched God through every single day of my recovery. At first, I was just taking 1 lap around the inside of our house, then 2 laps, then 5 laps, then 12 laps. Then I was walking a half mile behind the house, and now I'm back to doing miles and miles on the treadmill and lifting weights again. But it was about being patient, about not pushing whatever God was trying to do, to trust Him, to not have to worry about, well, this fall I'm going to be losing all my speaking events. It was one of those days when I was really struggling, going, "God, what are we going to do with this?" And Terry Peer calls me up on the phone, and he says, "Hey, they're looking for a speaker for this Midwest Sportsman's Classic coming up. Would you be open to it?" I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, it's going to be in February." I said, "That's like perfect timing for when I'll be back to speaking again." So my wife and I began to pray and just listen to what God was saying. Within 2 weeks, I booked 6 events, and I didn't make a single call. God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. We can trust Him. I didn't get out to hunt like I love to be able to do this fall. I couldn't hunt with my bow because I wasn't allowed to draw because of my chest being split open. And the buddy let me go out to his house, gave me his crossbow, put me up in a little shooting house, and he said, "Don't take any bucks, but you can take some freezer meat." Popped a doe. She didn't even go 5 yards. We took her and put her in the front loader he had there at the house, put her in the back of the truck. God provided again. A couple days later, I get another call. One of my best friends, Teb Justice, gets a hold of me. And he said, Brent, he said, I'm going to be over your direction. Do you need some meat? Yeah, we do. He said, I had a feeling you might with your surgery. He said, I'm going to bring you some meat. And I'm like, well, what are you bringing? Did you take a deer? He says, well, I've got some moose. I've got some caribou. I've got some elk. I've got some pork. I've got some venison. I was like, this is awesome. Go ahead, bring it. We'll put it in our freezer. We can really use the meat right now. My freezer was so full, I still can't get the lid shut. We've had to move it to another freezer. We can let go of those things that we're trying to control and we're so afraid of. And we can give them over to God because He knows. He knows exactly what's going on. I don't know what you're holding on to coming into the new year, but I want to challenge you with this. Does God want us to please Him with what we do? Of course. But what does He care more about, pleasing or us trusting Him? You can't really please God unless you fully trust Him. I want you to think back over your life, and you can look in some of those places where you know you never would have been able to make it through if it wasn't for God showing up. And how does God show up? Sometimes it's a divine healing. Sometimes He shows up through others. Sometimes it's just their presence letting you know, I see you. You're not alone in this. I got you. Sometimes it's guys bringing a whole cooler full of meat to put in your freezer. Sometimes it's that check that comes in the mail when you had an expense you didn't see coming, and it's almost to the penny the exact amount you needed. I can't even tell you how many times that happened this fall. God knows. So as we walk into the new year, I just want to challenge you to take the time to sit with Him, to let go of control, to let Him speak to you, to surrender whatever it is that you're holding on to, and to let go and to let God. Father God, as we come to you today, I just want to give you praise and thanks for everything that you have done in my life, the way that you have shown up consistently. You taught me how to be able to trust you in all things, to let go and to let you take care of it and not me. And it's only when we listen for your voice that we truly can trust the plans that you have for us. To walk into those things fully surrendered and fully ready to engage in the purpose that you've created just for us. Remind us who we are in you, that we are fully complete, that we are totally righteous because of our faith in Jesus Christ, and that we are created to live that life to the full. Thank you, Father God, for loving us so much and giving your Son that He would come into this world to save us from our sins and to help us live that life to the full. You know, there's something that I say at the end of my Unleashed podcast every week, and I just want to kind of finish up today because the enemy is trying to pound you down saying you don't have what it takes. You're going to have things hit you you're not going to be able to handle. Well, here's what I say to that. When a man knows who he is in Christ, that he's been created in the image of the living God, when he is no longer held captive by the opinions of others or cares whether he lives or dies, that man is now extremely dangerous. Dangerous for good because he's been unleashed. Something I fully believe is that changed men change men. Let's go change the world.